For me, I think the biggest thing that football taught me was how to overcome adversity.
At some point in your life, you're going to have some tough times.
You have to have that next play mentality.
That cohesiveness and that working together, that's really something special that you can't get in a lot of other areas.
When you practice that and you live that in other phases of your life, it becomes second nature because all you know how to do is fight.
It's not an easy game. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
You start to appreciate the smaller contributions that people make. You don't just look at the big one because you knew it took 6 or 7 other guys who are unsung.
And you know, you can't take shortcuts and be successful.
Doing what they do to make it possible for the guy getting the press clippings or whatever it might be.
In this game, whether it's as a coach or a player.
So I would certainly say that you know, you definitely got a very quick lesson in how to overcome adversity playing football.
Welcome to FootballGameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the Czar of the playbook, and welcome to another edition of 4 Downs with the Czar here at MetLife Stadium. Monday Night Football as the New York Giants knock off the Cincinnati Bengals 21-20. Taking a look at some of the first half offensive takeaways for the New York Giants. Once again, I thought they did a great job coming out with different formations. What that did was weaken the Bengals' pressure. It widened out that secondary, expanded their zone responsibilities, and the Giants were able to pick and choose where they wanted to go. The football found a lot of one-on-one matchups, a lot of open plays down the seam because of how they utilized formations and really took advantage of that Bengals defensive front seven and also back seven as well. So again, formations helped these guys out offensively. The run attempts were there. The yards weren't necessarily there in the first half. So for them, I feel as though more importantly were the attempts. You have to run the football just to get those attempts up. So when you go with that play action passing game, it'll be much more effective. And also when you look at the fact that this was an offense that had issues in establishing a running game, but I thought by utilizing those formations, using those spread formations to set up their running game, it helped them out later on in the second half, and we'll talk about that. You also look at the fact that they started out hot, then they hit that cold streak, and then they started to pick it up late in the second quarter. So again, you want the Giants to come out hot and start hot and finish throughout the course of the half the same way they start. But you see the up and down offensive flow for this game. Sometimes they start out great throwing the football, and then they'll hit a cold streak. Sometimes they'll start out great with the running game, and then they'll hit a cold streak. You want these guys to flatline that level of consistency in their offense, and I thought that's something they didn't do in this ball game. But overall, in that first half, you saw some good things from the passing game, formations-wise, and also from the run attempts, which ended up helping them out later on. First half defensive takeaways for the New York Giants. I thought the perimeter defense was excellent. That's out on the flanks. Your corners and safeties, your alley defenders were making plays one-on-one in space. They were also doing a great job from a coverage standpoint. You didn't see a lot of big plays deep down the sideline or deep over the middle of the field outside of the one big play to start the game to the tight end, Tyler Eifert. The Giants played well on the perimeter, played well in the secondary, played well versus the run on the outside. So I thought perimeter defense was excellent. They got a lot of pressure on Andy Dalton, started to get batted passes, pressure to force errant throws. They were able to clog up the running game. So from a pressure standpoint, they were really in tune to what was going on from the start of this ball game. Moving on to second down, first half offensive takeaways for the Cincinnati Bengals. I thought Andy Dalton played well on both ends of offense. You saw him creating things outside the pocket, utilizing his legs to keep things going, keeping his eyes downfield. He found Tyler Eifert streaking down the seam for a big play in the passing game. So again, Andy Dalton utilizing his athleticism in the first half gave the Giants fits. He made it an 11-on-11 game, which is very important when you have a mobile quarterback. The third down offense for the Bengals, I thought, didn't do a great job. They really struggled to sustain drives, and this was a common theme all night long. But in the first half, it really curtailed a lot of what they wanted to do offensively. They couldn't really get the ground game going as well. That, coupled with their third down offense, really limited their offensive effectiveness in this first half. I thought they also did a great job in utilizing formations to create big plays downfield. You saw the Emery and Henry formation. You saw multiple spread formations for the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, when you come out and spread the field, it weakens zone responsibilities. It forces a lot of man-on-man situations, and if you're Cincinnati, you like to take advantage of that. That's how they got that big play to Tyler Eifert early in the game. Formations caused big problems for the Giants in that first half. Moving on to the first half defensive takeaways for the Cincinnati Bengals, I thought Geno Atkins was a one-man wrecking crew. You also saw the defensive line of Cincinnati really come to life and give that Giants offensive front some problems. Again, in the first half, the Giants really had issues from a protection standpoint because of how well the Bengals did up front. You also look at a guy in Drake Kirkpatrick making a great interception off a hitch route. He came from an off coverage perspective, drove up on the football, made the interception, and it set the Bengals up in great position to come away with points. He got a field goal out of the deal, but he played well in the first half also. So I think early on, from a run defense standpoint and also from a coverage standpoint, the Bengals defense came ready to play. Moving on to third down in this ball game, Giants offensive takeaways in the second half. I thought they started to get the ground game going a little bit. Actually, it picked up a crucial first down with 2 minutes and 39 seconds left in the ball game, and that's something that they needed to see happen. And also to close out the game, Rashad Jennings broke off a 20-plus yard run. So you saw the running game start to have some effectiveness. You also saw Eli Manning struggle mightily in the second half from a placement standpoint. His passes were all over the place. He missed some wide receivers. Actually, coming off of a turnover, he gave the football right back, throwing in interceptions, George Iloka. So you want to see Eli Manning get better from a placement standpoint, but you had to have like what you saw from the running game. It started to get going, and that bodes well for this Giant team moving forward. Second half defensive takeaways for the Giants. You have to be excited from what you've seen from Landon Collins, the safety, picked off another pass, third consecutive game with an interception. You also like what you saw from Eli Apple, the rookie. He played a great game all night. A lot of times he was matched up on A.J. Green, and you didn't hear a lot from A.J. Green all night long. So Eli Apple, big confidence booster for him, playing this game very well against Cincinnati. And you also like that front four getting pressure. They started really turning up against that Bengals offensive line. Well, it was very interesting because in the first half, the Giants defense did a solid job, but in the second half, they did a great job, and vice versa for the offensive line of the Giants. I thought they did a great job in the second half, not so much in the first half. Bengals were the opposite as well. Their offensive line completely collapsed in the second half. So I think that Giants defensive front four started to get their mojo going, started to get their groove going. They didn't have to blitz a lot because they were able to get pressure with their front four. And finally, looking at fourth down, Bengals second half offensive takeaways. Their offensive line protection completely fell apart in the second half. They could not block one-on-one. They couldn't really work together as a unit. They couldn't sustain a drive because their offensive line couldn't give Andy Dalton time back there in the pocket. You also look at the fact that his athleticism, Andy Dalton's athleticism, was on full display. This was a guy that, again, tried to will his team to victory. He kept plays alive despite the offensive line not having the protection. So I thought Andy Dalton played a really good game today. Showed a lot of toughness, a lot of mental toughness in trying to get things going for this Bengals team. And also Tyler Eifert came ready to play. I thought this was another big game for him. And if they can keep him healthy for the rest of the season, this Bengals offense will continue to be able to move the football. They'll have better days than what they had out here offensively against the New York Giants. And looking at the second half defensive takeaways, the Bengals were stout on third down. In the second half, the Giants really couldn't sustain drive. They couldn't move the football down the field outside of the last drive, which was the most crucial one. But their third down defense, I thought, was very impressive. Now, schematically, the Bengals had some issues, and partly because they had their safeties far out wide. A lot of times you saw safeties playing too deep and you didn't see them maybe just inside the numbers but right outside the hash. A lot of times they were on top of the numbers, which opened up the middle of the field all game long. So schematically they were beat by alignment a lot. The Giants had a lot of room throwing the football on crossers. They had a lot of room throwing the football over the middle of the field. Those seam routes were wide open. So schematically I thought they were beat mostly in the second half, but they had those issues all game long. And you also look at George Iloka, the safety, made a big time play, but unfortunately the Bengals offense couldn't capitalize on that interception that came right after they turned the ball over and threw an interception. So the defense played well enough to where they had a chance to win late, but the offense couldn't move the football because, again, their offensive line really fell apart in the second half. Offensive player of the game for the New York Giants, I have to give it to Rashad Jennings. He did a great job running the football. It may not show up on the stat sheet, but when they needed him to close out the game, he stepped up big. And the reason why I'm giving it to the running back or to the running game for the New York Giants, Rashad Jennings, because you look at this offense that has had issues running the football the entire season. So when they needed their ground game to step up big, it did. So again, Rashad Jennings gets offensive player of the game for me for the New York Giants. Defensive player of the game, I will have to give it to the entire defensive line of the New York Giants. I thought they did a great job in the second half, collapsing the pocket, getting pressure on Andy Dalton, really shutting down the running game in the second half. And it was a big reason why they were able to come away victorious because, again, their defensive line stepped up big time. First time we've seen their defensive line play like this all season long. So the entire defensive front and their depth get player of the game awards. Offensive player of the game for the Cincinnati Bengals, in my opinion, I have to give the quarterback Andy Dalton. When you saw his athleticism on display tonight, it was very impressive. This was a guy that makes it an 11-on-11 game. He did what he had to do to keep plays alive, to keep his eyes downfield, finding targets deep down the field. So Andy Dalton, I thought, played a great game in spite of his offensive line having issues, especially in the second half. Defensive player of the game for the Cincinnati Bengals, I'll look at Geno Atkins and what he was able to do as a one-man wrecking crew, getting pressure on Eli Manning, disrupting the passing game, being effective versus the run. So I thought tonight we saw the Geno Atkins that we saw a couple of years ago for this Bengals defense. So that's a wrap from MetLife Stadium. I'm Emory Hunt, the Czar of the Playbook. For more of our 4 Downs with the Czar segments, visit our website at footballgameplan.com/4downs with the Czar.